So we're going to have a 7.5-minute video. Then each speaker will take 5 to 7 minutes to speak, and then we'll open it up to questions. And I think we're a small enough room with enough people that we can just project our voices, and I'll call on people as they raise their hands, okay? So without further ado, let's get started.
The alt-right, they take sometimes very direct inspiration from the hate groups of old. This subculture has grown in message boards, specifically like 4chan and Reddit. A younger generation of mostly white male for each other's based upon a white identity politics, as well as just an overall reaction is what they call political correctness. They are trying to recruit youth for the long haul.
They're unabashed white supremacists, racists, anti-Semites. I mean, they stick by those views. Richard Spencer, he's the man who actually coined that term, alt-right. He was in Washington this weekend. He was spewing, as he often does, I mean, what I can only describe as hate-filled garbage.
When I say us, I recognize that there are many different people in this room with varying perspectives, hopes, and dreams. So I'll define us simply. We think race is biologically real, and that it has tremendous social, cultural, and historical consequences. More important, we have a passionate attachment to our extended family and the cultures and civilization that it birthed.
Equality is a dangerous myth. The alt-right is united in rejecting the current dogma that all races are.
Sorry, I'm gonna try a different file real quick. Sorry, y'all.
Can I pick your brain while we're standing? What do you think about voting?
I think I just saw it. I'm still in the same
Is this a street sign? No.
Thank you for your patience. Let's try this again.
Differ in average levels of intelligence. They do not build identical societies. And there is no reason to think non-whites can maintain Western civilization, the civilization that whites create. Terror of being called racist paralyzes white people. But the hold of this great evil on the minds of whites is loosening.
2 or 3 years ago, I finally came to understand what is called the Jewish question, that there are problems with the Jewish people. And that was difficult because I really didn't want to become an anti-Semite. It's like the biggest cliche, the biggest right-wing cliche.
Women shouldn't have the vote. Because if you do give them the vote, they will mess up your psychological defenses and your legal systems, your protocols, your culture.
This is a new populist, conservative, and libertarian movement that is going nowhere so long as the left continues to prioritize Muslim feelings over gay lives. So long as the left continues to prioritize the feelings of sociopathic feminist bitches over everybody else.
Do you think that white culture should be supreme in the United States?
I think the United States was defined by Anglo-Protestants, certainly at the beginning, But particularly after the Civil War, it was defined by this big European family. So America is a white country in terms of its rooted historical identity.
Can you understand how people might be threatened by that kind of activity and that kind of language?
Yes, in a way they should be afraid, because we are changing the paradigm. Europeans could be the first ones to go to space. Only Europeans could build something as magnificent as St. Paul's Cathedral or St. Peter's Cathedral. Only Europeans could engage in the kind of scientific discovery that we engage with, that will to kind of keep going, that will to follow reason to its very limit, even if it shatters everything you thought before. There's only Europeans have went through these tumults of reformations, of enlightenment, of turning on ourselves. Only Europeans can be like that. A nation of frontiersmen, a nation of colonizers, a nation of conquerors. I also have big dreams. Reviving the Roman Empire, it would be an empire that would be welcome to Italians, to Scots, to Russians, to white Americans, to Finns, etc. To have a safe space for all Europeans from around.
To be white is to be a striver, a crusader, an explorer, and a conqueror. We don't exploit other groups. They need us and not the other way around. For us as Europeans, it is only normal again when we are great again. Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Donald Trump's selection of Breitbart boss Steve Bannon as his campaign CEO is bringing new attention to the idea of the alternative right, also known as the alt-right, and what that means.
This adds up to something we have never seen before. Now, of course, there's always been a paranoid fringe in our politics, a lot of it arising from racial resentment, but it's never had the nominee of a major party stoking it, encouraging it, and giving it a national megaphone until now.
Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
You know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so when you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
When democratic policies fail, they are left with only this one tired argument. You're racist, you're racist, you're racist. They keep saying it. You're racist. It's a tired, disgusting argument. The people of this country who want their laws enforced and respected by all, and who want their borders secured are not racists. If you want to have strong borders so that people come into our country, but they come in legally through a legal process, that doesn't make you a racist. It makes you smart. It makes you an American.
I mean, she does have a point. The new CEO of the campaign, I guess he's your boss, is Steve Bannon, who's the head of Breitbart News. And here are some of the headlines that Bannon has written on Breitbart. Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. And would you rather your child had feminism or cancer? And he has called, Breitbart has called Bannon has called Breitbart the platform for the all-right question. This is the man Trump chose to run his campaign.
About what was reported during Trump's meeting at the New York Times. He said that the alt-right is not a group he wants to energize and doesn't believe his candidacy did energize them.
Asked about a conference in Washington over the weekend that seemed to celebrate Trump's victory with a Nazi salute, Trump told the New York Times, "I disavow and condemn."
Well, maybe I'll go ahead and stand. There's a lot of people out there I'd like to see all these. First of all, I would like to thank you all for showing up today for this really important discussion. Also, thank you, Guy, for producing this really great compilation of elements of what the alt-right is about, what it is saying. I guess if our question is, does the alt-right matter and do I have an opinion about it, I would say yes and yes. So I guess depending on your slant, I'm either here as a historian and concerned citizen or as a psychopathic bitch. And you know, this is kind of the two polar opposite ends of the world that we're operating from. I could get into some of these very strange takes on history, but I think that we know that actually history has been made by people other than Europeans, and I'm not going to engage that. But what I would like to do is talk a little bit about how some of what the alt-right is doing actually is significant, because while the numbers are small, it engages with some very dangerous historical currents that have been brought up again and again and again and are fairly threatening, I would say, to American liberty. In the Mainstream Conservatives Guide to the Alt-Right, Breitbart News offered this explanation of this ostensibly new political movement on the American scene, which it thinks of as separate from American political conservatism. This is not about the Republican Party, this is not about traditional conservatism, this is something else. The way they describe it is they say, to young people and the politically disengaged, debate in the public square today appears topsy-turvy. The regressive left loudly insists that it stands for equality and racial justice while praising acts of racial violence and forcing white people to sit at the back of the bus, or more accurately, the back of the campus or in another campus altogether. Meanwhile, the alt-right openly crack jokes about the Holocaust, loudly, albeit almost entirely satirically, expresses its horror at race mixing, and denounces the degeneracy of homosexuals while inviting Jewish gays and mixed race Breitbart reporters to their secret dinner parties. What gives? For the meme brigade, it's just having fun. They have no real problem with race mixing, homosexuality, or even diverse societies. It's just fun to watch the mayhem and outrage that erupts when those secular shibboleths are openly mocked. These young mischief makers instinctively understand who the authoritarians are and how and why to poke fun at them. And they try to connect this sort of mirthful activism to the youth movements of the 1960s and the counterculture, the anti-Vietnam. And I am not convinced by this. Not even a little. Because later in the article, it says this, which I think is reflected very well in the video. The pressure to self-censor must be almost overwhelming for straight white men. And for most of them it appears to be, which explains why so much of the alt-right operates anonymously. So see, it's not sort of a mirthful, fun, joking movement, and always worry about things that are only a joke. While movements like third-wave feminism and Black Lives Matter often draw criticism from conservatives and libertarians, advocacy on behalf of those causes is not a career-ending offense for journalists. And I think in spite of this attempt to cast this movement as something that is, again, youthful, fun, and all just a joke, it taps into a white nationalist tradition that claims that